Hello and welcome to the 200th episode of the Tigers Down Under. I'm your host, Alex, and with me I have Logan. How are you, Logan?
Good evening, Alex. Yeah, doing really well. Excited for the looming kickoff and the start of a new season and championship campaign. So, doing well.
Yeah, it all starts again. I was having a listen back to our 100th episode just before this, just to see just how long ago it was, because it was just over 2.5 years ago now. So it was pre-COVID, which is, first of all, kind of sort of a funny state of the world to find that episode in. We weren't a video podcast at that point as well. And we were just on the cusp of the top six. I think we'd just beaten Stoke City 2-1 with a couple of goals from Jared Bowen, putting us on the cusp of the top six. So that was pretty much the peak of our powers, and then it was all kind of downhill from there with the relegation to League One. But it's sort of a funny whirlwind 2.5 years on. New manager, new owners, new set of players, pretty much.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's not that football's ever predictable, but when you look at the path or the road that the last 100 episodes have been, and I guess the city journey in the time we've got new owners to celebrate, and I think that's probably still the biggest thing to come out of all of that. Where business as usual in the championship, and we've starting to, I don't know, I dare say, show signs of that rebuild that that got us excited under Steve Bruce. So it's precarious times, but it's a very exciting and uncertain time to kind of predict.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask you, what is your overwhelming feeling heading into this season? There's obviously been a lot of change. I think it's now 8 or 9 new players in the squad. Honeyman and Lewis Potter have left, so a couple of big names departing. What's your overall sense of what the season will bring?
I think I really liked Dan's assessment in the episode last week when he talked about the subcategory, or it might have been you actually, but it's like 6 to 10. I firmly believe that's where we'll be. I think one of the things that I just keep coming back to as I try to kind of guess or make a rational guess about where we'll end up is, remember when we started the championship last season, we still had a largely like League One certified squad. And I think that the positive thing is, or the real questions that I have is around the team chemistry. I think that we've, made some really good inroads and gone out and bought some players who, have demanded a transfer fee and, genuinely have a pedigree, and maybe not in the championship, but certainly in other respectable leagues around the world. And with that in mind, I think that largely gives us a reason to be very optimistic in comparison. However, the real question around us is, I still believe that that Shotter as a manager is unproven at this level, and largely he's got a team of imports, regardless of the pedigree that they do bring, and it's really going to be continuing to build that city core and those the pleasing players that we know have got promising futures ahead, like your Jacob Greaves, et al. But I just think that how we gel is ultimately going to define our season, and that chemistry is going to be a really hard thing to predict, which is why whilst I don't think we're a relegation team, whilst I don't necessarily think that we are right to be labelled a mid-table team, I think it's kind of a mixed bag. We could be an unbelievable championship side, or we could kind of take a while to get going. But I think the promise is certainly there. So, look, I'm going to say I would love to see us scrape into the playoffs. If we don't scrape into the playoffs, I'd struggle to see us fall much below mid-table. So I'm back in the subcategory. I reckon 6 to 10 is the sweet spot.
Yeah, it was interesting. I was listening to a couple of podcasts during the week, both the second tier and also Not the Top 20 do their predictions ahead of the championship season. Both had us, I think one had us 11th, one had us 10th. Apologies for the spoiler if people are still looking to listen to those. But I thought, that pretty much fits in with our expectations as well. I think, as you just said there, it's going to be a very interesting season. I think there's a lot of pressure on Shotter early on, given some of the comments from the vice chairman and Tan Kessler saying we're sort of expecting or hoping for top six, and it'll be a disappointment if we don't make top six, but not a sort of end of the world if we don't make top six. But I certainly think that means that, granted the fact that Shotter didn't actually win a whole lot of games last season in his spell in charge. I think it was maybe 6 games from 19, I think, was his winning record. Means that there'd be a lot of pressure on him quite early on. And it's interesting, I think, because we've got quite a tough opening month of fixtures. So I think rational and patient City fans might look at that and say, okay, well, we're not necessarily expecting to win all the games or even the majority of the games, but I do wonder what will happen if we only win 1 or 2 games, or if we have a couple of bad losses. I think the owners are impatient. I think they do want to get to the Premier League sooner rather than later. And I think if they don't see signs of improvement, and as you said, a bedding in of this sort of international core of players that we now have, I do wonder if they'll make that move sooner rather than later.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know this sounds like a somewhat silly comment, but just looking at the quality of the teams in the Championship this year, like some of those teams that have dropped back from the Premier League, well-renowned Premier League sides that have been there for a long time. And I mean, looking at teams like Luton Town as well, and how the kind of heights that they got to in the past, we would have looked at a Luton Town as, a certain Championship team that you would expect to walk through. And it's a really interesting thing. And I think that's the beauty of the Championship. But it's always hard to predict because of how volatile the league is. And to place, such strong expectations from the, I imagine from the board and the owners early is certainly, like, it's a great thing that they do have such high expectations. But as you mentioned, like, the Championship's a tough league, and to walk into a challenge like that with a team that hasn't really had time to gel yet, it does seem quite ambitious to be setting, such great heights for particularly really the first season that Sean had under Kuhn.
Yeah, and sort of, I guess, speaking of the new players, following from last week's episode, we've had Benjamin Tete officially sign. I think he was pretty heavily linked before that episode, but put ink to paper after that. He was signed as a free agent in the end, so on a 2-year deal with an option for a third. He's only 25, so pretty good age for us to be picking up a player. Last played at Malatyaspor. I think they were relegated from the top division in Turkey, scoring 7 goals in 23 games in the process. Seems a pretty reasonable quality player. I think he's a Ghanaian international player, so that's pretty high pedigree in that sense as well, to be an international player. And adds a bit of depth and competition to that front line to compete with Estepinian, and is certainly a step up from the old Eves and Magennis combo we had up front.
It certainly seems that way. It really does look like the owners have targeted, those forward players and really tried to, buy goals, in the sense that letting Kane Lewis Potter go, and then I guess before that, with Jared Bowen and Grzycki, like, we really have lost, our proven goal scorer. So it's I guess it's promising to see that it was an area that they definitely targeted. And as you said, there's going to be a lot of competition for who kind of leads that forward line. And I found it really interesting listening to Dan and yourself chat about who the leading goal scorer would be, because it is so largely unknown. But it's kind of nice to have that fresh slate and to kind of see what comes of it.
Yeah, no, definitely. And we'll get to your predictions a little bit later on. But the other transfer news we had, we've been linked to 2 players from the Premier League. I think one as a permanent, one as a loan. Names that have emerged, the name that has emerged as that forward option on the permanent deal is, I think it's Halil Dervisoglu, I want to say. So he's a Swedish-born, or he's a Dutch-born player, but he plays for Turkey, and he did play last season at Galatasaray. Says he's a striker at Brentford. I think he's more of a forward, so he's probably a bit deeper than an out-and-out striker. When the report sort of initially surfaced, I did hope it was more of that creative number 10 type, which I think is where we're really sort of lacking at the moment since Honeyman left. Don't know a whole lot about him, to be honest. I guess, as you just sort of alluded to, just the further reinforcements up front is a good thing to have that depth and competition. But I guess, that sort of comment that we're probably looking to get that number 10, that creative midfielder in the building as well.
Yeah, it definitely seems that way. And, I guess that's kind of the real big question around why I find just Shota such an interesting, predicament starting the season is if you don't have a creative 10 and you've got kind of this potential strike players around him then it kind of leans into that chemistry thing, that although you might have proven goal scorers, if you don't get the chemistry right, then it's going to be really hard to create those really quality opportunities. And it's just going to be such a fascinating thing, as you kind of alluded to. There's probably a little bit more business to be done before the window closes, and I think that is going to be a huge a huge position that needs to be filled if we are to genuinely have a chance at fulfilling the high expectations. And I think that when you hear Kessler speak, there's a real reassurance in the way that they kind of go about their business. It seems almost too transparent in the way that they telegraph exactly who we're looking at and talk about if there's been any meetings for the vast majority. So I'm really hoping that there's something up their sleeve and that they haven't shown all their cards just yet, and there's still someone waiting in the window.
I think when you sort of look at our lineup or how we'd be expected to line up at the moment, it almost feels like there's just this hole in midfield where you've got this creative 10 or just like a center forward or like an attacking player just to link, because it feels like we've got Seri and Tufan who can play sort of deeper, or Slater who can play deeper. We've got our back two or back three, our defense. We've got the wide players, but we just don't have that attacking midfielder or someone to link up that defense to attack. We kind of saw against, we're not going to go into too much detail in the preseason games, but we saw again against Peterborough, as we did against Leicester, that we just had no shots at all, pretty much. No chances created. Are you one to sort of take too much out of a preseason game like that, or are you more of the opinion it's more just about the fitness? Or do you get a bit concerned that we're not creating chances and gelling as a side?
Well, look, I remember a few seasons back, I'm pretty sure it was we played Liverpool, and I think we might have beaten them 3-0 in a friendly. And so if you're ever going to go into reading into the pre-match seasons, then I'm pretty sure that we didn't do too great that season anyway. But if we're to read into that kind of stuff, no, I definitely don't think so. I thought, looking at the friendlies and the experiments that were kind of having two games happening on the same day, and as we'll talk about, I'm sure, with the elder squad that went to Cambridge, I really don't think that you can read too much into that. I mean, you probably get an idea of who the starting lineup is likely to be on game day. But as far as the actual what's happening on the pitch and the kind of system that they're playing, I think there's a lot of trial and error going on. So no, definitely not reading too much into the results at all in the preseason. But equally, if we had have gone out and won those games convincingly, then I think we'd probably be sitting there going, "Oh yeah, we looked really good," and some of the combinations are starting to kind of pay off, and we can't really say that yet. So you can kind of make a case for either way, but the real one is going to be this Bristol City opening day fixture to give us an indication as to the work that's been happening on the training ground, and maybe a chance of what we're likely to see throughout the season, although the first day of the championship never really reveals too much.
Yeah, 4-1 at Preston on the opening day last season didn't really pan out for the rest of that month, or much less that season. I think that was a pretty decent percentage of our final goal tally, to be honest, in that opening day game. Look, you touched on, we did win 2-1 over Cambridge as well. Elder and Tyler Smith, I think, were the main sort of first team players involved in that one. There's been a lot of, maybe controversy is the wrong word, but a lot of debate over Callum Elder's spot in the side over the summer, I guess, starting with those rumours about him sort of mouthing off at the pub about the owner and, Smallwood's not going to be offered a deal, Honeyman's off, no one likes the owner or the manager. And sure enough, Smallwood left and Honeyman left as well. So people started to connect the dots and think, is there actually truth in this rumor? I personally, I tend to think that there isn't truth in the rumor, or if there is, I think it's water under the bridge, and Elder sort of had copped his whack from the club and he's sort of moved on from it, because I just can't imagine he would still be at the club. He started the game against Fenerbahce, all those sorts of things, if there was too much truth in it. But it does seem to have sort of soured him in the minds of some supporters. I think it's going to be interesting to see where he sort of starts the season. I think there's a few rumors floating around that Fleming might be injured. So I do wonder if it means that we'll see Elder in the first couple of games. What's your sort of take on like Elder's place in the side, or if you've heard those rumors or anything like that?
Yeah, look, interesting question. I tend to agree with you. I don't think there's too much in it, and I think if it is, it's probably a minor story. Look, Callum Elder's not exactly the most outspoken guy, and I do think that with all due respect, I think that Hull is a very good club for the quality of footballer that he is. I mean, you don't exactly see him making the leap up to the Premier League anytime soon, and equally, I don't see him, being a League One player. I think Championship is certainly his level, and I think a club like ours certainly suits, his ability. So, if there is, if there is anything to it, I think it would be dealt with rather quickly, and he would probably on the same page be looking around at the squad and see, all the incoming players and the competition. Like, he's going to have to really fight for his spot. It's a very different story for him, I say under the old City team, but Callum Elder had that run before he got injured, where he was stacking up the assists, and I know that he was in the Who squad.
He was in the team of the season in League One. Yeah,
that's right. And so I think that we understand the value that he does offer, and coming off a significant injury like he did. I think there's still certainly room, but I don't think he'd be, counting his chickens before they hatch. I think he has a real awareness that if he wants to play regular first team football this season, he's going to have to, produce week in, week out at a very high level. I don't think his position's guaranteed at all. So, look, I don't think there's much in the story. I think that he probably will start due to the, reported Fleming injury. And I'm really looking forward to seeing if he can return to, the level that he did get to, because I think he's fantastic.
I think I put him in the same basket as Doherty and even, I guess, Smallwood last season, where I think these are players who performed really well at League One level, sort of struggled to adapt to the Championship last season, but that I wonder if, when surrounded by better players as they are now, a guy like Doherty, who's reportedly had a great preseason, same as Slater, will actually make that step up more naturally. Sort of like, and I'm not comparing them to the same quality, but sort of like when we had the players who went through all four divisions for City, like, Andy Dawson, Myhill, Ashby, and France, I think it was, all went through the four divisions with City. And, I'm sure every preseason as we went up the divisions, there were people saying, well, we've got to replace Dawson in the side, or we need a better keeper than Myhill. And then they came out and produced. And people were sort of surprised at the fact they were able to make that step up. And I don't think Elder's, as you say, I think Championship's just about his level. I think Fleming's probably the one for the future. But I certainly think in this side, in the Championship, I think that they'll be quite adequate.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. He does give me I don't know, again, don't want to make too many generous comparisons, but he gives me real El Mohammadi vibes, in the sense that he just has that tireless work rate. He's a fullback who can definitely get forward and has
loves a cross,
delivery. So like I'm really excited to see how he does go. And I just it's always nice to see an Aussie doing well in City colours.
Yeah, that's right. Well, we'll move on then to talk predictions. We've sort of alluded to a couple of them already. So Dan gave his, and I sort of joined Dan last week as well in giving my predictions. But I'll get your thoughts on who you think will be top goal scorer.
Oh, look, I think the Ostapinez is, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, is probably who I think will be there, purely based on his previous record. However, I am not sure in saying that at all. And I'm really excited to kind of see how he goes. I don't want to give a prediction in this one, because I'm just excited to see what happens. I feel like somebody will emerge. And I think it will be a head and shoulders a goal scorer. I just don't know who it is. But if I were to have to place a bet, I would be putting it on him as my man.
Fair enough. Who do you think will be the player to most improve this season? I sort of cheated last week. I went with Tufan, who doesn't have a whole lot of City history to build off, but I sort of went off the logic that might start the season slowly and really build into the season. But who's your thoughts for most improved?
I feel like this is a dangerous one to say in the sense that most improve is I think Jacob Graves made significant inroads last year, and I think that it was a real emerging season for him as it was. But I kind of think that in so many ways he will be the man. I kind of don't want to cheat on this one because I feel like the easiest one to say the most improved would be however we pronounce his name. It's a really difficult thing these days with the city name.
Yeah. Well, we've got Oscar for short. We've got Ali for short. I think I'm just coming up with all sorts of nicknames to sort out the players. I don't know what we'll do if we sign this new Brentford player, but
well, there you go. See, I think look, Jacob Graves is my player who I think is going to have a fantastic season and will be talked about frequently. But Ali, in so many ways, was in City jersey last year and didn't do all that much. So it wouldn't take much for him to improve on what he produced last season. Although we saw glimpses, and I think he's going to have a really big season too. So
yeah,
either of those two would be my locked bet for most improved.
most definitely. Okay. Who is your tip for best summer signing?
Osterpinez. I think that if Oscar comes up with anything like you predicted in your goal scoring heights and even goes close to the goal scoring numbers that he's produced previously, I think he may be our man.
Fair enough. We've sort of already covered finishing position. You were saying 6th to 10th. So I guess the last one I'll ask you about is biggest red flag after a month. So I think we've got 7 or 8 games to start the month. Dan said the biggest red flag will be if we haven't scored many goals. I sort of said if we concede too many goals. Is yours one of those, or is it something else?
No, I think that it comes back to Shotter again. And I guess putting numbers on things like you said, if we won like 6 out of 19 games or something like that, I think he really needs some early wins. So I don't want to say that in the first 8 games we need 7 from 8 to prove that he's man, but I think we need probably at least 3 or 4. Well, let's say 3 wins from our first 8. If there's anything less than that, I think that would be a significant red flag. I don't really care how it comes about, so it's probably a combination of what you guys have both said. But I think we need 3 wins from 8 to really get the fans excited about this new look City outfit.
Yeah, good shout. Okay. Well, then just before we move on to the Bristol City preview, we are bringing back our Who Am I feature for this season as just sort of a little fun game to play, a little quiz for our guest of the week and also for the viewers listening on at home. So the way this will work, I'll give 4 clues. You can make a guess after each, or you can pass if you don't have a guess. I'll give the number of appearances for City in the league, as well as the number of goals scored in the league, their nationality, the year they joined, and the year they departed City, their position and shirt number, and then finally their initials. If you're still stumped by that point, so are you ready to go?
Let's do it.
Okay, so the first clue is I made 156 appearances for City and scored 7 goals.
Okay. Looking defender or winger, I'm hoping at this point. Yeah, I'm not going to get it from that.
Fair enough. So the second clue is I'm English. I joined City in 2011 and I left in 2015.
Whoa. Left in 2015. 2015. No. All right, next clue.
All right. So correct. So I played as a centre back wearing the number 5. And if you want, I can throw in a bonus clue that I scored in one of the most significant games that City have played in.
Okay.
Probably gave it away, actually. That was probably a bit too much of a clue.
No, I think that you said that the nationality is English though. So
yes, I think so. I think I might be okay. You might be thinking along the same lines as me. Let me just double check that, because I do think he could have qualified for a couple of countries. Let me double check that while you think. No, sorry, you're right. I'm not English. I'm Welsh. Apologies to said player.
Scored in a significant. Well, Welsh. I feel like sure, the Welsh centre backs. Who have we had in the last 2015 as well? Oh, this is gonna annoy me. Oh, this is really frustrating.
What if I before I give you the initials, I could give you the club we signed him from?
Sure. Yeah. Give
We
me the.
signed we signed this player from Manchester United.
Oh, wow. It's James Chester.
There you go. Well done. Yeah, it was. I did try to find a sort of a trickier one to do. I do apologise for claiming he was English. I think before he declared for Wales, there was sort of some talk that he might have played for England. So I think I had that in my mind. But yeah, no, that was certainly a tough one.
No, that's fine. I've always had it was very fond memories of James Chester because I feel like as a as a player he's still gone on, but his time at City was certainly his most I say profitable, but he did the most growth and really emerged as a player at his time there, with us. So it was really nice to see. And I guess a player that we're still somewhat fond of. I really like James Chester. So
yeah,
I
mean, he's just signed for Derby, so he'll be playing alongside Curtis Davies and managed by Liam Rosenior. So it's a bit of an old boys City gang. But I was having a look at his appearances stats, and yeah, so he obviously he did have a pretty successful spell at Aston Villa where he played 119 games. But his most prolific time was at City. He made 156 appearances. So he's been most recently was at Stoke. He was at West Brom for a little bit. But yeah, I feel like, as you said, I feel like there's a lot of good memories of him in a City shirt.
Yeah, indeed.
Most definitely. Well, the manager who I think was the manager who signed him permanently, Nigel Pearson, is our opposition manager this weekend, managing Bristol City. So that's a somewhat good segue to that one. We had a draw and a loss of them last season. We drew 2-2 under McCann with Longman and Honeyman grabbing the goals. And then later in the season lost 5-0 in that sort of, we were experimenting a little bit with how we were playing. We'd sort of supposedly scouted them out and changed up our style to suit them and got absolutely smashed. A lot of the fans in the stand were just sort of there for a party, end of season, dress up, that sort of thing. So it wasn't too bad. But they've certainly improved since last season as well. They've made a couple of decent signings. They had a very prolific attack, and they've now moved out in the market to sort of strengthen their defense as well. Most notably bringing in Cal Naismith from Luton, who had a really terrific season for Luton. So a pretty decent signing for Bristol City for that one. Another side sort of in the same bucket as us, who'll be looking at really making progress up the table this season. So how do you see this one panning out?
Yeah, look, it's such an unpredictable one in the same way that we went out and, pumped Preston on the opening day last season. I just have a real uncertainty about even what to predict. So look, I'm gonna try and be optimistic here. I think given the fact that, we've gone out and purchased a lot of players, it's quite a foreign experience for us in the last couple of years to see players that demand a fee coming into the club. So I think with that, there'll be a little bit of expectation and, hopefully a new hungry team looking to perform. I'm going to say 2-1 City.
Nice one. We do have, for anyone listening in the Hull City Australia Facebook group, we do have a tipping competition being run by our very own Mitch Wiley this season, where he'll be scoring everyone based on whether they can get the result right, the number of goals City score right, and also the opposition goals right. So 3 chances to get points in that one to keep everyone entertained through the season. So certainly check that one out. How do you see us lining up in this game? I guess that's a pretty important question as well, because it's as you say, with so many new players coming in, it's so tough to know how we'll line up. Do you think we'll stick? I mean, we've sort of seemingly stuck with the 3 at the back for most of the preseason. Do you see us sticking with that for this game?
Yeah, I do think at home. I think on the opening day, I think they'll look to be aggressive. I really want to kind of expose and see what our attacking flair kind of has to offer. So I think again, keep citing last week's podcast, but I know that, you know, listening to yourself and Dan talk, it does certainly seem that we seem more comfortable with the back three, and to be at home, you know, starting the season on opening day with a back three and really try and, you know, bomb some of those players forward and see what our you know, what our wide players have got, and particularly the new guys in the middle, how they can kind of look to gel up. I'd be fascinated to see if you know, what they're capable of. And I think that starting with the confidence of a proven back three that we seem to be comfortable with is probably a step in the right direction. So I'd be surprised if we did move away from that.
Yeah, and I think it sounds like, I mean, Tufan seems to be getting more and more fitness under his belt, but I wouldn't be surprised. I guess we've got Seri most definitely will be starting. I would think. I did see actually he's been wearing a brace recently on his wrist, but he claims that it's not really impeding his training or playing. So I think that should be fine. But I would think we'd probably see midfield three of what Seri, Slater, and maybe even Doherty is sort of that three at this stage. And then what Ali, Oscar, and I mean Sinnick's injured now. Maybe Longman up front.
Oh yeah, the forgotten man, Longman. You know, did find a goal last season. You're exactly right. Yeah, I would not be surprised to see something along those lines. I mean, it'd probably be a bit fresh for Tete to start. Yeah, I think that you're pretty close. That's probably what I would expect to see.
Yeah. And then really positive news as well, membership sales. I think I saw that we were pretty close to 13,000. I think initially it was over 14,000, but I think that figure was revised. But still, over 13,000 seems like a really great figure. You know, when you add in away fans, when you add in people who buy on the day, you're looking at sort of maybe we'll be averaging crowds around 15, 16,000, which seems a pretty awesome step up from the sort of 9,000, 10,000 crowds we were getting, or 8,000 even under the Allens.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it just harnesses, you know, the energy around the club since June took over, with the fact that they've really stuck to that, you know, the mantra. I know when you see the advertising on the city site now, they kind of rebranded with that, like, one family, you know, one dream, whatever it is. But they've really leaned into that. And I think that, you know, true to his word, if June keeps, like, he's doing the things that he says he's going to be doing, where, you know, he's making football accessible. You know, ticket prices are very reasonable. I saw on a couple of the away forums too. A lot of you know, clubs are excited about the prices that they've seen about coming to visit City, which, you know, again, as you said, like, when we're talking about the crowd numbers of the players who are the supporters who we expect to buy on the day, and then once the word gets out from the you know, the away fans that, you know, City's a reasonable place to travel to price wise, like, all of that stuff really buys into creating a very positive, you know, experience on match day. And, you know, certainly something that we haven't seen at the KCOM for a few years now, albeit kind of towards the end of last season. But when you've got that upfront, those upfront ticket sales from the members, I think it probably leans towards this idea of, you know, the fans starting to come back, which is exactly what he's aiming for. So well done. I think it's a fantastic step in the right direction and very welcome news.
Yeah, absolutely. Very welcome indeed. And it's very exciting to have the championship back this weekend. Cannot wait for it to get started once again. Hopefully a result in line with the first game of last season. Hopefully we can kick off things with a really exciting win. I think for me, if Oscar can get off the mark, or if, you know, Ali can get on the score sheet, any of those new signings, if we can sort of even just get a goal from one of them, I think we'll really get everyone excited and really sort of buying into it. I think, you know, sort of a mixed bag of, I don't want to say results in preseason because the results don't really matter, but I guess a mixed bag of performances makes it a bit uncertain about what to expect from these players, and a couple of injuries don't help either. But yeah, look, it's certainly going to be a really exciting game to look forward to.
Absolutely. Can't wait.
Can't wait. Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining me for this one, Logan.
My pleasure. It's good to be back.
No worries. And thanks everyone for listening in. We'll be back this time next week to review the Bristol City game and look forward to our next set of games. So until then, come on, City.